The impact of stress on body function, stress and memory. Memory types. There are three types of memory: sensory, short term, and long term. The hippocampus is crucial in transforming short term memory into long term memory. Although long term memory depends on larger brain regions, short term memory is dependent on the frontal and parietal lobes. Hippocampus and stress response. With the highest concentration of glucocorticosteroid receptors, the hippocampus, a key component of memory processes, is extremely sensitive to stress. Prolonged stress raises cortisol levels, which can harm the hippocampus by causing atrophy and a reduction in neurogenesis. The memory process is disturbed by these alterations, especially when it comes to learning and recall. Stress and effects on memory. Significant memory issues have been associated with prolonged exposure to high cortisol levels, such as in illnesses like Cushing's syndrome or through the use of synthetic corticosteroids. Long-term exposure to cortisol has been linked to structural damage in the hippocampus, including changes to synaptic terminals and reduction in dendritic branches, and a drop in the number of neurons according to research. People may consequently suffer from memory difficulties such as problems with declarative and spatial memory. Brain imaging shows decreased hippocampus volume in PTSD, which is associated with language and recall and memory impairment. Stress and learning. Under certain conditions, stress can improve memory, even though it usually decreases it. For instance, when stress is combined with new, unpredictable, or potentially fatal stimuli, it may enhance memory. In high-stakes scenarios, such as tests, this effect, which is usually transient, may result in improved recall or sharper focus. Long-term or chronic stress, on the other hand, can impair memory function by interfering with the hippocampus's capacity to create new memories and retrieve old ones. Timing and stress exposure. It is important to consider when stress exposure occurs in relation to learning or memory retrieval. Stress exposure immediately after learning can help with memory consolidation and reinforce what has been learned. On the other hand, stress that arises before learning or during memory retrieval might impair memory function. Either early or late cortisol release can improve or impair the brain's capacity to receive and retain information. Stress and its multifaceted impact on cognition. Understanding cognition. Cognitive processes include learning, decision-making, attention, and judgment, mainly formed in the hippocampus, amygdala, and temporal lobe. Stress effects on cognition, depending on intensity, duration, and origin. Mechanisms behind stress effects. Acute stress alters cognition via neurotransmitters. Chronic stress causes long-term effects due to glucocorticosteroids, inflammatory factors, and neurodegeneration. Glucocorticosteroids can cross the blood-brain barrier and influence brain processing. Psychological impact. Stress activates systems like the autonomic nervous system and hypothalamus pituitary adrenaline axis, directly affecting neural circuits. Chronic stress leads to changes such as increased IL-6 in plasma cortisol and decreased BDNF levels, contributing to cognitive and mood disorders. Specific brain regions affected. Hippocampus. Reduced neurogenesis, spatial memory impairment, neuron destruction. Prefrontal cortex. Disruption in judgment, decision-making, and memory retrieval. Long-term consequences. Persistent stress can lead to cognitive decline and disorders resembling those seen in depression. Stress-induced changes in gene expression further exacerbate cognitive impairments. Individual differences. Stress effects vary based on age, gender, and individual thresholds for stress intensity. Responses to stress are highly individualized. Same stimuli can produce different effects across people. Potential for cognitive recovery. Managing stress can improve cognition and memory, reduce secretion of glucocorticosteroids, has neuroprotective benefits. Stress and immune system functions. Severe stress can suppress the immune system, putting people more at risk of illnesses. Types of illnesses: cancer and tuberculosis. Severe stress can develop from sudden, major, or stressful life changes. Stress mediators can be passed through the blood. Secretion of hormones can be affected by stress, like the decreased secretions of growth hormones. Stress and cardiovascular functions. Positive association between heart health and stress have been established. There is a connection between the autonomic nervous system and cardiovascular system. Effects from sympathetic nervous system. Increased heart rate, stronger contractions, vasodilation in the arteries of skeletal muscle, narrowing of veins, decreased sodium excretion of kidneys, contraction of arteries in spleen and kidneys. Effects from limbic system. Decrease or stopping of heart rate, decrease contractility, decline in blood pressure. Stress can increase the risk of thrombosis and ischemia. Stress-mediated risky behaviors, 5 categories. Increase in stimulation of sympathetic nervous system, initiation and progression of myocardial ischemia, development of cardiac arrhythmias, platelet aggression, endothelial dysfunction, stress and gastrointestinal complications. 2 aspects of GI function affected by stress. 1. Effective appetite. 2. Normal function of GI tract. Other areas affected. Functional physiology of the intestine. Permeability of the mucosal membrane. Potential diseases, irritable bowel syndrome, and Crohn's. Here's a little picture of everything. Stress and endocrine system. Broad and mutual relationship between the endocrine system and stress. Stress has subtle effects on the endocrine system, while endocrine system affects the response to stress. Stress can change the way the endocrine system by changing the activity of the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenaline glands. The adrenergic system, gonads, thyroid, and pancreas. By affecting the hypothalamic pituitary adrenaline axis, it can change the activity of the hormones.